Good afternoon, everybody. We're just kicking off. I can see we're still getting people joining as we speak. So I'm going to give it sort of 1 minute, and then I'm going to kick off this presentation. Um, Hope you're all having a wonderful evening. Give it 1 minute, and we will start. Okay, everybody. We're going to kick off, get going now. Clearly, this is an afternoon, not an evening. I'm wishing the day away already. Uh, right. So. My name's Derek Strachan. I've been working for CPS for quite a long time now. I head up our business consultancy practice. The Today, I'm just going to be walking through a little conversation really about how PMOs or some of the challenges that PMOs have on a day-to-day basis, some of the things that maybe are affecting the way that they integrate into the organization or provide benefits to the organization, what we can do about it immediately, and how that can actually build a foundation for the future of both the organization and the PMO. So with me today, I've got Nicola Carty, Head of Sales Commercial. She'll keep an eye on the comments, pass any questions that you might have or anything to me when we see them, or if you shout out questions, we'll pick them. I'm going to fire a few polls into the webinar as we go through, so you'll be able to put things in there and let us know how you're feeling. All right. So let me start by just firing a poll into there, basically just asking you why you've come along today, what you're here for, and get a view on that. Okay. Okay. I think that's launching now. Okay. So, as I said, we'll start off with a little bit about what threats, what opportunities PMOs see now, things that in our experience over the last sort of 25 years in my case, but over the last 5 years, maybe more of a focus, what affects a PMO, what affects its impact on an organization, and indeed what affects the organization's impact on a PMO. So talk a little bit about threats, but I do want to talk about opportunities as well. So starting off, first thing we see a lot is PMOs, be that program portfolio or project offices or management offices, We see them sitting with a good structured governance process for what they do. Maybe they've got a few gaps here and there, but fundamentally for the delivery organization, it works. Trouble is, there's also business governance. There's also maybe team governance, team processes, starters and joiners, business strategy, business input, and how the business runs itself doesn't necessarily align with how delivery organizations align themselves. It causes quite a bit of friction if the strategy and the delivery organization are not aligned. Quite often the strategy sits and sets up targets for the business, but those targets are not linked directly to the delivery target. So we might be delivering things that are good, sound, and well managed, but they don't necessarily align with how the business wants us to go, or even what the business wants us to do. Something we see more and more at the moment, and it's a real hot topic that I see almost everywhere I go, particularly for PMOs that are maybe traditional project delivery. We've got organizations that are adopting agile methods, be that Scrum or any other of the agile methods, and raise the question, well, why do we need projects? Why do we need a PMO? How does that operate with us? If we're managing everything through boards, through Azure DevOps or Jira or whatever it is, how does that relate to the project plan? How does that work with us? Surely that's no longer needed. So we have this sort of conflict, if you like, between the two methods. I'll come in a little while to how we can address these things, but this is a key one where it is a threat, but it is actually a massive opportunity too, because there are real strong ways of working where you can bring those two nominally opposing versions of the truth together to actually create a stronger version of everything. And I'll talk a little bit about that shortly. Product versus project. In some ways, it's similar to the last one. We're developing products. Those products get delivered out into clients. We don't do projects per se. We are constantly developing our in-house products or our things that we're providing to clients. We don't do delivery projects. Well, actually, that's not the case. The two things work hand in hand, but quite often products will deliver outcomes to projects will deliver outcomes to clients. And it's aligning those things effectively that's the key. Complex demand and capacity, another hot topic, another one that if I had 5 pence for every time I've had this conversation, I wouldn't be a millionaire, but I'd probably be able to buy several rounds down the pub. Complex demand and capacity models caused by BAU, projects, delivery, product development, training and holidays. All these things have an impact on the capability of the organization to deliver. And it's relatively easy to say, well, we've got 53 people and we've got 52 people's worth of work, or 100 days worth of work, or whatever it might be. But it's really difficult to actually pin down what's causing bottlenecks, where are those bottlenecks, how are those actually being impacted by projects, yes, but also those delivery methods that we're talking about earlier on and products alongside them. So actually tying those things together so we can get that holistic picture is certainly a problem. I really think that is a PMO opportunity. It's really where the PMO can bring benefit to an organization, be that an agile organization or a more traditional organization. The PMO can actually provide the information that brings these threads together. Organizational change, you get the organization working, and then some so and so goes and changes it all. Again, this it's difficult. Constant change is, if you like, a given. Um, but again, this is an opportunity. Providing the oil to allow the machine to work well, even when it's moving and changing, is one of the strengths of a delivery organization. By definition, a delivery organization is a change organization, and PMOs and PPM staff can actually assist and make sure that that works. I think sometimes businesses change and they don't engage with the delivery staff that are used to installing change to make it happen. And that can actually be a big opportunity for us. PMO and PM skills, it's always a problem finding people to fill roles, particularly at certain price points. It's really difficult to find staff to actually fill organizational positions. It's also difficult when you've got, say, for example, that organizational change in the pass blocks. You don't want to employ more people because you're going through a change. You kind of want to have somebody temporary to help through the change. One of the things that I'm talking a lot to clients at the moment about is, if you like, PMO as a service, but PMO as a service to fill a gap. We know we've got a large program coming through. We know we've got a change program coming through. We know we've got opportunities that aren't going to last forever, but we need people to help us cover that. And that be that PMO, be that PPM, be that BAs, and actually having the ability to, if you like, rent those skills for a fixed period or for an ongoing period while you get over that hump is clearly going to be an opportunity. And I'll talk a little bit about that later down the line. So those are threats, opportunities, things that we need to face off. So that's great. We can maybe point fix some of those things, get over them for now. But how do we fix things so that long term we're not doing the wrong thing? So obviously I'm going to have answers to these things, but they change. And what I'm going to do as I go through here, I'll talk a little bit about how we've done this with our clients over time. So with regards to inconsistent governance, inconsistent structures through, it's important that we understand the organisation strategy, and it's important that the direct line of sight between that delivery governance, the thing that we do day to day, and the organisational strategy is there end to end. It's important that we can link together the, if you like, the targets, the business outcomes that the senior management are looking at directly with the things that we're prioritizing in our delivery portfolio. I've recently done 2 or 3 different pieces of work with organizations where we've put steps into the delivery at the front of the delivery process that looks at the strategy, rates the priority of the piece of work that's coming into the organization against that strategy. It takes you obviously take into account what you're actually able to do, how we can do that, how important it is, how valuable it is, what the business benefit is. All of those things, yes, we do, as you would always. But we also rate how that aligns to the business strategy and whether it's a valuable thing to do. Clearly, there's some simple questions you can ask. Are we we get a piece of work to do something. It says we're going to make money from making ice cream. Are we an ice cream manufacturer? No, goodbye. That kind of thing's really simple. But the more nuanced thing about whether or not this is going to deliver a higher alignment to the strategy is more complicated. But actually, if you sit back and you put the analysis into your governance process and check it as you go through your delivery process and make sure that what you're doing stays aligned, yeah, you can then feed back into the KPIs, which we should be all familiar with the key performance metrics that we're following. But we can also then go back to the organizational targets. We can go back to the things that the management team are interested in, and we can report back on what is filling those particular targets. Agile methods. I've said this before and I'll say it again, it's not a threat to the traditional PMOs or portfolio program or project offices. This is absolutely something that we all need to live with, but really should live with. I'm working with an organisation at the moment that has been traditionally project. They do a fantastic job at delivering projects. Their organisational structures are wonderful, and they do good stuff. They deliver good outcomes for their organisation. But the teams need to be able to work in a more agile approach to get better alignment to customer requirements, get better alignment to the changing needs of the organization. So those methods are being adopted. And then it's really important that the organization actually can see how those things are progressing. And it's quite difficult sometimes to see from the outside looking in how maybe an agile delivery is happening. So by the particular customer I'm thinking about, by aligning structures, aligning the agile delivery methods to key milestones within programs, linking those things together with maybe we're using ADO in this particular instance and project for the web, linking together the information from those two things to say, well, I can see the burn down, but I'm an executive and I don't necessarily understand burn down. What does that mean for my delivery dates? So actually bringing the information together to say, well, we can see that things are going to be delivered on time, but you might not get the full scope until. So bringing together the different approaches to give if you like, a human face to those two things. Like I say, kind of related, but likewise, product development and project delivery, they actually have a lot in common. They're called two different things, but product delivery is often just an ongoing project to deliver constant improvement to or new versions of a particular piece of kit. People like to think of them as completely separate, but you know what? The same people that deliver and develop the product are also the people that are going to be doing the problem solving. So the BAU, the product delivery, they're the same people. The change programs are going to draw on those skills to allow customization, to allow customer variance, to install or provide change support while customers go live. It's going to be much the same people, often the same person. So actually bringing those delivery life cycles together in the same way as I've talked about with the agile methods, you can draw those things together and you can work through the problems that you're going to have with a squad or a team running out of resources, or too many changes going live at a given time, or maybe the too many projects happening at the same time. That effectively leads us on to the complex capacity management question. It is impossible in this day and age to say, I'm going to run my projects in one silo, I'm going to have my BAU separate to that, I'm going to have my small changes, my product development, my agile teams all running separately to one another. That would be great if we could actually have these buckets individually and not worry about each other, the impact on each other. Life's not like that. We need to look at all of these things together. It's surprisingly easy to do that if you take some common sense choices. I've worked over the last 5 years, and I see some of the names on the webinar, and I've worked with some of you guys to put in holistic demand and capacity views, to catch stuff at the front door of the project, and to look at the product delivery, and to look at the agile team's backlog, and to say, how can we actually manage this? Where will we need more people? Do we need to delay this project until the end of the year or early next year? And if so, what's the impact on other teams? Maybe they're going to have nothing to do because we're overloaded in one particular area. We have to look at that holistically, and actually, if you have integrated governance across the piece, then that is an achievable outcome. And actually, it's not that hard. Keep the capacity side in line with the change, and this just doesn't need to be difficult. So, fundamentally, if we can balance the teams, if we can balance the capacity that those teams have, take into account part-time working, take into account training needs, take into account all of the background activities that they need to do. We tend to dismiss BAU as something that just goes on. Quite often you have teams that are 80% BAU because they're focused on a particular outcome that isn't necessarily change related. That's fine. Work with that. Keep that capacity in line with the change, and it doesn't need to be difficult. It can be a very simple approach to change and capacity management. Finally, about the teams themselves and that problem that we have with either changes that are blowing our capacity or the need to actually have more people, or just I worked with an organization recently who they just have a high turnover of staff. They're a very large organization. I take that back. They don't have a high turnover of staff compared to anybody else. But because they're a very large organization, they always have a few percent of their roles empty. They're always recruiting. And that few percent of their roles translates into 3 or 4 BAs, 2 or 3 project managers, a PMO person. But they just always have those vacancies. Now, either they're running headless chicken or they're over-egging the pie in their demands. Actually, most of the time, they're running headless chicken, because that 2 or 3%, those extra BA that aren't there, those extra PMs that aren't there, means that someone else has got to do that work. So you've got people working 12, 14 hours a day just to keep the wheels moving. Consider service provisions for that kind of area. Consider PMO as a service, consider PM as a service, PPM as a service, to keep that sort of little line of gap filled. It's just a common sense thing to do. And if you, by some miracle, manage to get all of those vacancies filled, great, you don't use a service. If you do have a bigger gap, the service can expand. That kind of jam, that kind of glue between what's possible and what's available can make the difference between high turnover of staff and loss of people through demoralization and a fully operational, well working organization. So these are things that you can do. These are things that you can put in all of these things here we've done with organizations in the last 12 months. All of these things here can be as simple as, the demand and capacity stuff. It can be as simple as a couple of weeks worth of work to get a grip on what the projects are, what the other demands are, and bring together a model to support it. Maybe just to close up the front end of that process to make sure that it operates smoothly. And within a few weeks, you can actually be operating well. Some of the other things can be bigger, but none of these things are huge. These are all things that you can do within weeks, or at most a handful of months, rather than years of effort. Okay, and all of these things are just good practice. They're just good common sense. All right, I have another poll. Going to I'm going to fire that up now. Essentially, this one's just based on the things you've just heard. What are the current threats that you guys are seeing? Does it align with the things that I'm talking about? Do the things that I've just spoken about ring any bells, or are there other things that are driving your difficulties? Or maybe you haven't got any difficulties. By all means, that's possible. But in terms of how these things are driving your business, what do you think of those? Okay, well, that one's going. All right, so we've got some threats. We've got some things you can do about them. Like I say, those things that we've talked about are relatively easy to adopt. But how does that affect us next? How do we actually keep moving in the right direction? Well, that's a lovely statement, this. Don't neglect support services. I have spent quite a lot of time in this organization, and quite often, as things change, the support services are seen as part of the old way of doing things, and those support services get put on the back burner and maybe replaced, maybe swapped out, changed. My view is actually very simple. I'm firmly of the view, and anybody that's attended my webinars before will have seen this model that I have here. PPM maturity, and therefore delivery maturity, and the maturity models, industry models, are covered in that top line. I'm a firm believer that actual PMO maturity aligns with that completely. And without PMO maturity and PPM maturity, and therefore business maturity, you actually can't get a well operating, a efficiently operating business in terms of delivery, but also in terms of BAU, in terms of product, in terms of agile delivery. Without these things working together, without the maturity of both parts of that equation being there, you just can't do things that you need to do. And in particular, to be operating well, an organization needs, their delivery organization or a business needs to be managed and optimized, preferably optimized, but at least managed, at least level 4 in the maturity scale. Anything below that, and you're striving to improve, you're trying to get better. 4 or 5, you would argue that 4 but a lot of organisations stop at 4. But you're looking to get from 4 to 5, and as such, you need both the PMO and the delivery organisation to be at least well managed, but preferably optimized too. Now, the thing with these things is, unless your delivery organization is well integrated, unless there's a clear integrated governance from the leadership of your organization right the way through to the realization of benefits, you kind of can't get to those levels. You kind of actually can't control the way the business actually improves unless your PPM and PMO are measured, controlled, performance is being improved, initiatives are aligned to their stakeholders, i.e. strategy. The organization is picking up the outcomes of the delivery and feeding that back into KPIs and management. If you haven't got, if you're not in that 4 or 5 maturity, the organization can't grow. The organization can't improve. You're going to be constantly battling. It's going to be like pushing water uphill if you can't get to those areas. So fundamentally, maturity of a PMO affects the maturity of delivery, but it's also the other way around. Your delivery, your PPM maturity, your PMO maturity are related. They can't work independently. They just can't, because you just not got the ability to go from the very top management to benefit delivery or customer delivery unless those things are operating effectively. So what does that actually tell us for the future? Well, there's a model here. It's a very simplified model, but essentially we're saying you've got your leadership and they drive the strategy. Now, often that can be very woolly. It can be very high level. It could sometimes just be statements. Okay, but the leadership should drive the strategy. They shouldn't be down at the delivery performance level telling everybody how to do their delivery performance. Some are, and some do it quite well. But realistically, they should be driving the strategy. Now, the strategy, being often woolly, needs to be turned into objectives and results, key results, OKRs. It needs to actually have translation, if you like, to a business plan, to an objective for a team, an objective for a department and a team, an objective for delivery organization versus BAU. Okay. Then the delivery organization can take that, turn it into KPIs, turn it into the way they actually are going to measure their performance. And they can take that down to quite a low level of detail and actually say, right, okay, I need someone to be able to deliver this consistently 80% of the time. I need customer satisfaction 80% of the time. I need delivery to be 90% efficient. You can start taking key performance indicators and applying them to a lower level of detail. And then you can measure delivery performance in an optimal way, in a way that means that you can see when things are actually good and when things are bad. Okay. Now, traditionally, a PMO would be down in the delivery performance. Maybe would help with the key performance indicators. Certainly would help providing data that measures against KPIs. That's reasonable. But if we're going to do it properly, if we're going to have aligned governance from leadership through to delivery, through to benefit realization and customer satisfaction, we kind of need to be involved all the way through. From liaising with the leadership to make sure we've got the right things, to helping phrase the strategy in a way that means that objectives for departments, objectives for organizations and teams are aligned in a way that can actually be delivered, and that those KPIs are aligned, therefore, to those objectives in a way that will see the strategy delivered and in a way that the leadership can recognise. And then when we measure performance, we know why we're doing it. We know what it's all about. So if we're involved all the way through that, if, call it portfolio, call it program, call it project, if we're organised in a way that the management office can help align those strategies together, align those governance areas together, then we can actually provide proper business benefit, and we can show the organisation how to operate. All right. So what next? This all makes sense. I'm quite happy with that kind of stuff. Now, clearly, I'm here for a purpose. We do provide services around this. We do provide program and project office assessments to work out where you are on that growth cycle, how we could help you fill those gaps. We do provide program office improvement services, and we do provide PMO as a service to help your organisation grow. In many cases, we do both of those things together. I've worked with several organisations over the last. I've worked with several organisations over the last few years where we've helped them change. We've helped them put new change in, but at the same time, we've provided PMO as a service to allow people the headspace, if you like, to make those changes. And this is what I mean about, temporary rental of PMO or PM staff can be a benefit and helps organisations grow. Clearly, myself and Nicola are here to help. We can get involved in anything that you would like us to. I've written. There we go. I've written several blogs that you'll find on the website where you signed up for this webinar that talk through some of the things that we've done with other organisations, but they also talk about how you can engage in your own organisation to get them to invest in improving the way you guys work. CPS themselves, we are experts in this. I've spoken loosely here about being here for 25 years. CPS have been around for a long time now, and we've helped a lot of organisations in this space, both in terms of adoption and change, in terms of consultancy, but also in terms of the tools. We are that Microsoft partner. We've been around for a long time putting these in, and like I say, looking at the name, some of you know that. We're here to help. Any questions?
Just what I was going to ask, Derek, if anyone had any questions based on that. Thank you for that. Got one there. So we have a squad system in place. So how do you think that would work with PPM?
Yeah, so we're talking about agile squads. Organizations quite often with agile, we work in squads, so we'll have squads that are dedicated to particular purposes. This kind of what I was saying earlier on about the same people doing the same stuff. When you go into a squad organization, they're going to be answering the support calls, they're going to be developing the product, they're going to be working seconded to project teams, and actually pulling together a simple resource profile for all of those elements and adding it together gives you the capacity to look beyond the next sprint, as it were, to look beyond the next delivery cycle, and actually say, look, you know, the squad A, squad B, squad C are all running at capacity. I can see that the work coming down the line from the portfolio is going to mean that we've got more need for squad A and B, maybe less for squad C. Gives us an opportunity to retrain, move people between squads if we need to. Also gives us a chance to flesh out squads. If all of the squads are needing more people, then it gives us an opportunity to actually increase the capacity side before we out-demand it, as it were. One of the things that Agile is very good at is reacting. It's not so good for predicting way in the future, and as such, this is where the sort of having a capacity plan on the top of the Agile processes, on the top of the other delivery processes, really comes into its own. Hope that helps.
I think we've identified that, haven't we, with one of our existing customers in the manufacturing space, a mix of Agile, PPM, standard delivery. You know, as you've highlighted, they can all interact with each other in their own way for each organisation, right? So don't discount.
It's a very hot spot at the moment where, you know, organisations are trying to come up, you know, trying to work in the most efficient way, and in terms of software and other types of delivery, having an agile approach is an efficient way of delivering this stuff. And you know, I'm not going to King Canute this and say, you know, the tide's not coming in. These things are efficient. All we need to do is adapt them so that we can get the right information to the right people out of those delivery methods without slowing things down.
Yeah. There's another one there
Any
as
others?
well. Yes. So you mentioned as a service. So ideally, how would this work to support our transition to a new world, I guess, is based on that.
So there's been a couple of organisations that I'm actually working with now and have worked with over the last couple of years. It's really difficult to take on a change to some of the things that we've talked about without some help. And I know I would say that, wouldn't I? But it's having the headspace to do your day job and the change at the same time. And often people don't think about that. In terms of adoption and change, one of the things that we talk about a lot is how do we make time for change? How do we get an organization to understand that you can't just go make that happen and next day it's done? Yeah. So we talk a lot about making space for change. One of the things for large or even just heavily loaded PPM organizations is to use PMO as a service or use PPM as a service to just give that space for change, offload the day-to-day stuff to someone just to turn the handle while you focus on the change and making it work for the organization and getting the organization to improve. Hope that helps.
I hope so too. Got any other questions there, Derek? So give everybody a minute or so if anyone else wants to ask anything. But if not, it's been really informative. As Derek said, we can obviously help. If you'd like to chat through anything specific to you, you know, we're happy to support with a personalised chat just to discuss what you're trying to do and impart some of Derek's expertise and knowledge. My colleague Kai will follow up on the next steps from this, and if that's of interest, we can look to put something in or contact myself or Derek, and we can see how we can help.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for your time. Hope that it's worth the missed lunch, and hopefully see some of you soon.
Thanks, Derek. Thanks all. Take care now.